In today's video, we are once again going to be taking a deep dive into Tropical Storm Aaron, which is definitely expected to become Hurricane Aaron and potentially even Major Hurricane Aaron. In addition to talking about Tropical Storm Aaron, we are also going to be talking about the potential for some more fall-like cold air moving into the central and eastern states. We're starting to see the models bring back more intense cold fronts and definitely unseasonable. It's already been that way throughout early August at times, and maybe experiencing more of it for the mostly the late portion of August here over the coming weeks. We're going to see models bringing in temperatures that are much more typical of late September, early October, maybe even later for many different areas in the central and eastern states. We'll have more on that a little bit later on. This one has a wide variety of potential outcomes, including moving out to sea, which is probably the most likely outcome at this point, but we cannot rule out other outcomes, such as an East Coast impact, whether that's Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, or even further northward, even Canada. The East Coast of Canada could be impacted if this thing just grazes the East Coast. Still, with the current track and everything we know about the history of storms taking this track, we still can't even rule out a Gulf Coast entry. I know a lot of people were upset by my thumbnail yesterday. I like to consider every possibility, especially with tropical systems. This is the number one most unpredictable type of system that exists as far as weather is concerned. And certainly, we want to be weary of rolling things out too early, and we've learned that with hurricanes over more recent years. There's been a lot of surprises that I can remember through the years, so definitely considering every possibility at this point, being clear about what's most likely and least likely, but it's not 0%, if that makes sense. So we're going to be watching the Caribbean as well, Bahamas, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. These areas should be to the south of the system. They might see indirect impacts, but if this thing slides a little further south than expected, those areas could become involved. I've seen systems slide way to the south, so we're going to be watching it. We see the current satellite imagery, and we're using the long wave IR so that we can see during the night, and this is actually just before midnight last night, so the 12th into the 13th, and then all day through the 13th today, up until 7:50, which is when I'm recording this video. And we can see that the primary thing I think that is really noteworthy is right in here. So the last, I would say, 4 or so hours, we see it really start to explode. This is around 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6, 7, right there. And we can see it really, really begin to take off. Whereas back here, it was really struggling. There was some dry air, some shear getting involved, but it is expected to be much more favorable conditions here off to the west where it's currently headed. As I zoom out here, we can see the current projected track according to the National Hurricane Center. Again, we do expect this kind of slow, gradual curvature to the north, but this just continues to concern me. This track is just staying way too far south and west for what you would want to see from a system that's clearly going to go out to sea. I would say we're not in that clearly a fish storm category at all. We're not really close to that yet, at least that complete conclusion. Again, these areas, Florida, Bahamas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, this, for being days out, is not a huge distance. That is not a huge distance at all. Maybe the Bahamas a little further off, but still, you ask yourself, what would it take for this to maybe meander a little bit more? Not a whole lot. That is, being like 7 days out plus, that is not a huge difference at all. So we're going to be continuing to monitor this one. I think everybody should be paying attention to this system because of the intensity that is expected to move up to. I got a couple comments yesterday that I want to address. A couple people being like, if we don't know where it's going to go, what's even the point of talking about it? Why are we even talking about it? I think for a lot of you, it's probably obvious, but for those of you that it's not obvious for, I'll kind of break it down, but we know that this is a impactful and dangerous system. We don't know the exact location it's going to hit, which actually makes it a little bit more noteworthy because everybody has that chance, right, of being the area that this one moves into. And that's what it's like with these tropical systems way out in the middle of the Atlantic that have so much time before they would even be close to areas in either the Caribbean or in North America. This is something that needs to be monitored, and I think the unpredictability of the track is actually makes it worse and again more noteworthy. So let's go ahead and move over to the model guidance where we'll be able to see what the GFS model says for this one, and then we'll also watch the European model a little bit later on. Of course, if you don't live near the coastlines, we are going to go over all of the storminess around the nation, rest assured, in just a little bit. Now we're just playing out the model guidance, and you can see as of now the GFS model still has this one pretty well out to sea. It makes sense that this model tracks right along with the National Hurricane Center's forecast because the GFS is the American model, the National Hurricane Center is the United States National Hurricane Center, and the GFS model is typically one that they lean into a lot. So definitely makes a lot of sense there. We're going to see the European model bring this thing scraping along the East Coast, which is definitely further west than what we saw from that model yesterday, and shows us kind of that possibility, not the likelihood, but the possibility of something a lot more impactful taking place than what this GFS model shows. You might also take note that we have this area here in the Gulf, mostly the Western Gulf, where we have a 20% chance of tropical development over the next 2 and the next 7 days. So we're going to be watching another system, and spoiler alert for when we get into the European model, it brings in another major tropical system actually into that Gulf. So really, really going to be a lot to discuss in the tropics. We can actually see many different tropical waves coming off of Africa, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this model run, and even a 6th on the way. So suddenly we are just like a light switch turning on, seeing these tropical systems just wake up. And we talked about that a lot throughout July, where a lot of times you don't see it coming. It just hits and you don't know where it came from. And all of a sudden we have all of this tropical activity, a little bit unpredicted. We've seen generally unfavorable conditions, not really temperature wise, but mostly shear and dry air wise, closer to Africa. And we thought, a lot of people thought that we would be waiting until, late August to see activity. And we've seen, early August into mid-August now be extremely active against what many, many people were predicting and thinking. So just goes to show you how unpredictable the hurricane season can truly be. Let's go ahead and move on to the European model, where we're going to see a lot more of this tropical activity. We're going to see the general storminess around the nation, which there is some of that to talk about. And again, that fall light cold that many of you are probably pretty excited for. Let's go ahead and talk about that general storminess real quickly. First off, already by today, we have some of that going on in the eastern states here, where we can see areas from Texas eastward through the entire deep south and up the East Coast, dealing with some chances of scattered and isolated thunderstorms and showers there. Definitely a nastier day. It's been quite cloudy. We also see, again, for Thursday, tomorrow, the 14th, a lot of the deep south and East Coast being the main area to watch kind of. Friday, a lot of the same. We have this deep south and southeast area. We have the Four Corner states now starting to wake up a little bit, and even the Pacific Northwest, which is a big time sign of the time of year that we're in, because the fall and winter time is when we really start to see systems moving into their neck of the woods. And we're seeing that here, which is really, really interesting. Let's go ahead and keep on going towards Saturday here on the 16th, where we just see kind of an expansion of the same areas. I mean, again, Northwest, Four Corner states, deep south and East Coast there. We do see the upper Midwest starting to get more systems moving by. There's actually a little bit of a dragging cold front. It's probably a stationary front by this point up here, bringing some thunderstorm activity by Saturday. As we move towards Monday or Sunday here on the 17th, we see that a lot more of the northern states are seeing activity by this point, mostly seeing the Northwest there, Northern Rockies, Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, Great Lakes, into the Northeast there, seeing the majority of our activity. There is, of course, some in the southern states like New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, a bit of the Gulf Coast, and then we see Georgia, South Carolina, seeing some of those showers and thunderstorms. By the time we take a look at Monday on the 18th, we start to see our tropical system moving on screen here just to the north of the Bahamas, Haiti, Dominican Republic. Again, this is a lot closer than what the GFS model is showing and also what the National Hurricane Center is showing. So again, if a model is showing it, it is certainly possible. Now, I mean, that's not every time. Sometimes they have errors or glitches or things that, aren't typical. But this is a standard, and it's the European model, I mean, after all, but it's a standard model run. This is definitely based on a real possibility and certainly something we're going to be watching. Again, keep watching. Tuesday on the 19th, this thing is gaining steam in an area that has extremely warm waters and extremely favorable conditions, so it makes sense that a lot of intensification would happen in this area off the southeast, kind of north of the Bahamas here, kind of cradled in right there. We'll be watching this closely. As it intensifies, it's more likely to pull northward, and that's why we see a lot of northward movement begin here. This is Wednesday the 20th. Again, a lot of people have been talking about a trough that is going to push this one out, but look at the jet stream way up to the north. That is not going to play much of a role here at all if it looks like this, and that's probably why the European model is showing a solution much like this one. 954 millibar low pressure center, which is an absolutely insane system. And right there, we see it just narrowly miss the Outer Banks. There is a 952 millibar hurricane. And then we see it come really, really, really close to southern New England. As time moves on, we see that second tropical system move across the Yucatan Peninsula here and into the Gulf Coast. And really, it looks like it's heading directly for the coast of Texas. It's important to note that this is very, very far out. It's 360 hours out on August 28th. So definitely take this with a grain of salt. The bigger feature and bigger fact here is that these models are showing another large and intense tropical system, and they are showing it in the Gulf, kind of Caribbean area. I think that's noteworthy as well for this range. That definitely gives it a chance of being something that is relatively accurate, but relatively is the key word there, because the likelihood of us seeing a strong tropical system move exactly over the Yucatan Peninsula and exactly into the Texas coast, now you're talking about something very specific that is very far out, and in that case, very unlikely to happen precisely as we're seeing it on the model. So keep that in mind, that we want to kind of look at it with, like, I don't know how to even explain it, kind of like a broader view and a broader perspective of what the model is trying to show, as opposed to a more specific and narrow perspective. Keep that in mind whenever we're talking about the long range. I think that's a wonderful, beautiful way to look at it, because that is the way that you can actually get useful information. A lot of people will say, beyond 5 days out, it's trash. Don't even worry about it. Don't even think about it. But how many times have we seen models show something that, in a sense, does happen? It just might not be exactly where or when the model had exactly shown it, but if you would have had that broad perspective, you would have at least had an idea. And that's my exact philosophy on the weather and these models and everything. I think that's like almost overall to a T, kind of my perspective here. I think there's a lot of valuable information to get at, between days 5 and 10, even beyond 10 days, 240 hours and beyond. You can get signals. You can get an idea of things to potentially expect, which I think is what people are mostly looking for. When we look at the total precipitation, it's interesting. You can see the tracks of these tropical systems. Again, our primary tropical system here comes very close to the East Coast. We're talking maybe 200 miles further west than the Europe or the GFS model. So there is still a wide variety of what can happen. Looking at the anomalies, you'll find that the only areas really that are seeing above average precipitation outside of tropical activity is the Northwest here, Pacific Northwest. And they don't get a ton. It's just that they don't expect a lot this time of year. So it doesn't take a lot to throw them into the above average category. An area that is actually expecting a lot still, we've seen this for months, is going to be the Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, and Great Lakes here. Really interesting. Also, the whole Western Gulf, which makes sense because at the very tail end, we do see a tropical system move into here. Again, don't think of it too precisely. We do see wherever this tropical system goes, it's going to see largely above average precipitation by default because there's just so much coming with it. But outside of the tropical systems, you're seeing most of the central and eastern states dealing with below average precipitation, especially if you exclude the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. You're pretty much looking at 95+% of the central and eastern states dealing with a drier pattern over the next 2 weeks. Very interesting. I feel like in recent years, it feels like every August is much, much, much drier than June and July, especially July. I feel like that's just been a very large trend over a long-term pattern, maybe like 5+ years. It feels that way. So pretty interesting. It depends on where you're at, of course. In the summertime, you can see huge variations from town to town, let alone a whole region. So that's just a local perspective for me. You guys might feel completely differently. Looking at the temperatures, again, I kind of teased this earlier on, but we do see a not so warm pattern in the east. I mean, there's yellows and there's blues, but it's not super hot compared to what's typical. And some of these blues are very significant, especially when compared to the yellows. We're seeing mostly 1 to 5 degrees above normal, but you're seeing a lot of 5 to 10 degrees below normal, especially in the deeper south and southeast. I think the thing that's holding us back from seeing any large-scale cooldowns right now is this cooler pattern that we are mostly seeing for the northwest and western Canada there. So a warmer push up the central states here. It's really just encouraging a flat, kind of typical pattern there in the east. We do see things generally warm up, especially the further north you are, believe it or not. And that's going to be coming mostly late this weekend into early next week as we're looking at Sunday into Monday. And it gets pretty warm, but then we start to see these cool downs. First off, we get one more exclusive for the north, like the Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast here with a more backdoor cold front. Essentially, you can view it as like a cold front that's moving down the eastern states as opposed to coming from the west or, larger scale from the north. When we see this move forward, we see a much larger, more sustainable cooldown move in for the very tail end of August. And of course, this is far out, but you guys know how I feel about that. I've talked about it plenty today. We do see mostly a positive PNA in the west and a large signal for cooler air in the east and central states. So you've heard my perspective of the long range and that obviously there's value to be had there, but you might be wondering, what are some signs that the model is on to something versus it's just, one model run and done? And what we're going to be really primarily watching for, and I'll do this for you guys, you don't have to do this, is day after day after day, I'm going to continue to look at this and see if it looks similar to the day before or if we're seeing just this total flip-flop. But if the model is showing a large cooldown in that final week of August, day after day after day, that can be a really key indication that this has legs to stand on versus something that pops up on one model run and then the next day you see much hotter conditions and then the next day it's back to cold. That flip-flop is when the model's trying to figure out what it actually thinks is going to happen. When you see consistency even in the long range, that can be a good sign that there is, again, a little bit more legs to stand on there. Now, let's go ahead and dive into the, first off, spaghetti model guidance, which generally is further east than the European model by far. We see the majority of models bringing it up like this. A lot of these quicker movers end up curving way, way earlier. This, because look at this. These are all ending by hours 168. Every single model. So we got these ones up here ending in this general vicinity. We'll call this group 1, which is by far the largest group right now. So hence why I said that is the most likely outcome at this point. But we've got these stragglers down here, you might notice. And if we were to take their average trajectory, it's something like this, which is going to be more in line with the European model. It's just going to take it longer to get there. And this would be kind of option 2 or group 2 right now. There's endless options. It's just this is what the models are currently thinking. We take the average line of this one, it's far, far different. So you get this big split, this fork in the road that starts to really split off over time. These slower moving ones are likely the weaker ones through time, and they definitely miss out on some sort of push to the north here with a bit of a jet stream if it takes longer. So timing and intensity are going to be the two keys to the track here, and there's a long time to go. I think we have a good 2 or 3 days still at least until we have a much more solid perspective. Of course, time will tell. I'm going to update you guys daily, of course. Looking at the intensity guidance, there's kind of equally wide varieties of possibilities. We've got these really quick climbers that just take it straight up into category 3 and 4 status here and just keep it there. It almost just plateaus up there, as you can see. There's really quick explosion and then just levels off. And then you've got the slow climbers. And these slow climbers are keeping it at tropical storm status for days. Days and days and days. We're talking the 16th, 17th. So 3 or 4 days from now before it even crosses category 1 hurricane status. And it averages becoming a category 2, maybe 3, by the 20th or 21st. Yeah, 6 or 7 days from now. So these are a little bit more equal. I'd say this is a split more 50-50. You guys would have to tell me what you think. But we've got this group up here, and we've got this slow climbing group, and it's a pretty clean split. There's less in between than there is in the two pretty large groups. So we're going to watch it super, super closely. I think that these models are, again, they have a lot of room to kind of figure this one out, hoping that it's somewhere between Bermuda and the East Coast and not hitting one or the other. That would be the best scenario. And again, like I've mentioned throughout the video, the most likely scenario, in my opinion, at this point. But again, just need to give it more time. I'm nervous to really say anything with too much confidence on this one, because I've just seen storms like this, especially the ones that have this feel and it's just a really intense system where it's, to a certain extent, versus typical storms or snowstorms or severe weather events, it's going to have a mind of its own. And, you know, we've seen them do loops. I forget what the name of that storm was that did a full loop off the coast, the east coast of Florida. We saw a storm take almost this exact track, hit southern Florida, and then kind of recurve north in that kind of like northeastern Gulf area. We've seen a lot of weird tracks with this very southern route that this one in particular just happens to be taking. So again, we're going to watch it. I would just say be prepared for pretty interesting things ahead with this one's track and intensity, but time will tell. Of course, there's much more hurricane season to go. So we're going to be talking about storms for months. So just buckle up, guys. With all that being said, sorry about the rants. I know this video has been a little bit different than most of mine, but I'm sure you guys will forgive me. Be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.